I didn't expect to learn anything that night. It was supposed to be a normal evening: grilled chicken, a glass of wine, and that stupid Netflix series Claire had gotten me into against my better judgment. But when I walked into the kitchen and saw the way she jumped, as if I'd caught her pocketing silverware, something shifted. She had been leaning over the counter, clearly whispering something, not to a phone, not into her ear, but toward the tablet she always kept propped next to the spice rack. The damn thing had become a permanent fixture in our kitchen over the last few months. At first, I figured she was watching recipe videos again or zoning out to podcasts about murder or yoga or whatever else she pretended to be into lately. But it was the way she slammed it face down when she saw me, too fast, too loud, like a guilty reflex, that made something inside me freeze. "What was that?" I asked, doing my best to sound casual as I opened the fridge to grab a beer, pretending like I hadn't noticed how red her ears got. "Just watching something," she said, way too quickly, and when she turned around to pour herself more wine, her hand trembled just enough to make the liquid spill down the neck of the bottle. She didn't clean it, just set the bottle back down and gripped her glass with both hands like it was some kind of lifeline. She never drank wine on weeknights. Not unless it was one of those nights she was in a mood and needed to relax from work. But this wasn't stress. This was something else entirely. We sat through dinner mostly in silence, forks clinking against plates, the TV's background chatter doing the heavy lifting. She laughed once, too loud, at something on the screen, and I watched her out of the corner of my eye, wondering how much of this was real. When she got up to clear the dishes, I offered to help, and she waved me off. I waited until she stepped away to start the water, then made my move. I went to the tablet. It was still face down, the screen asleep. When I tapped it, it asked for a password. She never used to lock the damn thing. I didn't have the code, but I remembered something. Something stupid. A few weeks back, Claire had been baking and smudged the screen with flour. I told her to wipe it off, and she joked, "It won't open anyway unless it sees my beautiful face." Face recognition. So when she came back into the room, I stood up with the tablet in my hand and said, "Hey, your mom messaged earlier about Easter. Can I check the message real quick? She always sends you stuff instead of me." Claire hesitated for a beat, just a beat, and then gave me that strained, polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Sure. Here," she said, and leaned in toward the device. The second the lock clicked open, I turned away and faked like I was scrolling. But I wasn't checking any messages from her mom. I scrolled through the open tabs, the recent apps, the browser history. And that's when I found it. The tab was labeled something innocent, like weekly notes or client lists. But when I tapped it, I found a synced Google Doc that wasn't full of work assignments. It was a conversation, a chat log, 2 names, hers and someone called B. No profile pictures, just blocks of back and forth messages, all stored in a shared document like some kind of primitive secret club. And this wasn't just your usual emotional affair nonsense either. This was detailed, specific, things they'd done, places they'd gone. "The way you touched me behind the booth at that bistro," one line read, followed by, "I couldn't stop thinking about your hands while I was making dinner with him." I felt the blood leave my face. Claire's voice from the sink cut through the noise in my head. "Everything okay?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just closed the tab and set the tablet down like it was made of glass. Then I stood up, walked into the kitchen, and opened the drawer where we keep the plates. I pulled out one of the heavy ceramic ones, turned it over in my hands like I was inspecting a product, and then I slammed it down against the floor with all the strength I had. The crash was immediate. Sharp. Final. Claire jumped and turned around, wide-eyed. "What the hell are you doing?" I pointed at the tablet without looking at it. "How long?" My voice sounded wrong, like it wasn't mine. She went pale. Pale like hospital walls. "What are you talking about?" she said, trying to laugh, trying to move toward me. "Don't," I snapped. "Just, don't come near me right now." I read the document. The one you thought you were clever enough to hide in a shared drive. She stopped moving. Her shoulders dropped half an inch. "Oh," she said, so quietly I almost didn't hear her. That was the moment everything cracked. Not when I read the messages. Not even when I broke the plate. It was when she said, "Oh," like she'd just realized her parking meter ran out. Not like her husband had just uncovered an affair. That's when I knew whatever we had, it was already over. I just hadn't been informed yet. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch staring at the tablet like it might come alive and offer me some kind of explanation. She had gone to bed without saying anything else, just turned off the kitchen light, and walked past me like we'd argued about laundry, not peeled back the surface of our marriage to reveal something rotten underneath. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to see her face again. I already knew what I'd find. Someone who wasn't sorry, just caught. That was the part that gnawed at me. It wasn't even the betrayal itself, though that would hit me in waves later. It was the fact that she was so calm, so practiced, like she'd been preparing for this moment and had already decided how she'd handle it. Around 2 in the morning, I picked up the tablet again and opened the document, this time reading slower, really letting it sink in. Every time I thought it couldn't get worse, it did. They weren't just meeting in hotel rooms or parked cars. They were going to places I had taken her to, our favorite places. A little Italian spot we used to celebrate birthdays at, a hidden bench in the park near the river where she once told me she wanted to grow old with me. The messages were full of references to these places, casual and confident, like they had every right to be there. I could almost hear her voice in the way she wrote, playful and suggestive and completely foreign to me now. And this person, whoever the hell he wasn't a stranger. He made comments about the layout of our house, joked about things in our kitchen, mentioned that night you wore the red sweater while you cooked. That detail hit me like a slap. I remembered that night. She made pasta from scratch, poured us both red wine, and we had sex afterward on the living room floor. She'd been acting flirty all evening, and I thought maybe we were reconnecting. Turns out I wasn't even part of that memory the way I thought I was. When the sun started to come up, I stood, walked to the kitchen, and made coffee just to have something to do with my hands. I didn't want to think about anything, but everything was forcing its way in. I replayed conversations we'd had recently, the way she'd smile at her tablet and say she was answering work emails, the random laughter when she was chopping vegetables, the vague stories about where she'd been. There were no big signs, no lipstick on a collar, just that 1 second of hesitation when I walked in the kitchen. That was all it took to unravel everything. When she finally came downstairs, she acted like it was a normal morning. She poured herself a glass of orange juice, didn't say good morning, didn't ask how I slept. She just moved around the kitchen like nothing had happened. "You're not even going to ask what I read," I said, not even bothering to mask the bitterness in my voice. She paused, then turned to face me slowly. "What do you want me to say? I want the truth. All of it. Not a half-assed excuse or some story about how things got complicated. I want to know how long, where, who. I want to know why you thought you could use our house like a playground for your bullshit." Her eyes narrowed, and she crossed her arms. "You're not going to talk to me like that. You don't get to tell me how to talk right now." Claire stared at me for a long second, and I could see her deciding how much to give me. "It started a few months ago," she finally said. "We met through the school committee thing. He's a teacher. What's his name?" She exhaled through her nose, like this was somehow a burden for her. "Ben." I didn't recognize the name, but it didn't matter. All I needed to know was that she had brought a man into our routine, into our kitchen, and into her body, and had decided to leave me out of the entire thing. How many times was he here? I don't know. A few. Don't lie. I'm not. I laughed, but it came out hollow. "You hid an affair in a shared document. You're not exactly careful." Claire looked at me with something between pity and irritation, and I knew then that she'd already made peace with this. She didn't regret it. She wasn't mourning what we'd had. She was just mad it was now out in the open and she had to deal with me knowing. "I never meant to hurt you," she said, and the words landed with all the sincerity of a voicemail from a telemarketer. "You didn't mean to get caught," I corrected. "You've been lying for months. You used our house. You laughed in my face every single day." "It wasn't like that," she said, but her voice had no conviction. "What was it like, Claire? Enlighten me. What do you call it when someone sneaks around behind their husband's back, fucks someone else in their bed, and then makes dinner like nothing happened?" Her eyes flicked toward the floor, and she didn't answer. "I want him to know I know," I said, stepping closer. "I want him to understand that this wasn't a secret you two kept. It was a grenade you rolled into my life." Claire didn't speak. She just stood there, sipping her juice like we were having a normal morning chat. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized that I didn't know who I was looking at anymore. She didn't say a word for the rest of the day. We moved around each other like we lived in different dimensions. She took a long shower, stayed in the bedroom with the door closed, and I kept to the living room, flipping through channels I didn't even watch. Around noon, I opened the tablet again, not because I needed to torture myself further, but because I wanted details. I needed something real to grab onto. Dates, times, patterns. I went through the document line by line and started jotting down notes. There were mentions of Tuesday afternoons, references to lunches that turned into meetings, and casual remarks about parking far from the house, just in case. They thought they were clever. They thought they were being subtle. He even joked about it. "You're so good at this, better than my ex ever was." That line stuck with me more than the explicit parts. It told me this guy had done it before. It told me Claire wasn't his first, just the most recent. I knew I needed to see him. Not to fight, not even to yell. I just wanted to look him in the eye and let him know I existed, that I wasn't just some name Claire muttered when she had to explain her schedule. I waited until Claire went to bed that night. She didn't say goodnight, didn't even glance at me as she walked past. I watched her disappear down the hallway. Then I went to her purse and pulled out the little notepad she kept in the side pocket. She used it for errands, appointments, and anything she didn't want to type on her phone. I flipped through until I saw the name Ben. A last name scribbled next to it. I Googled him right there on the couch. He worked at a middle school not far from here. Taught social studies. I found a staff page with a picture. Balding a little, tan, early 40s maybe. Looked like the kind of guy who said things like, just being honest, a lot, and thought it made him deep. I wrote down the school address and decided I'd find a way to bump into him. Nothing dramatic. Just an introduction. The next day I called in sick. I didn't tell Claire. She left for work around 8, wearing makeup she hadn't bothered with in weeks. I watched from the window as she pulled out of the driveway. She didn't look back. I waited a few hours before heading out. I wasn't going to his job. That would have been reckless. I figured I'd start smaller. I went to a sandwich shop near the school, one that had a teacher special sign in the window. I sat by the window with a coffee and waited. He showed up around 12:30, walked in wearing a button-up and khakis, talking loudly on his phone. He ordered without even glancing at the person behind the counter, then took a seat at a small table in the back. I watched him from a few feet away, trying to imagine what she saw in him. Maybe it was the confidence, the way he leaned back in his chair like he owned the place. Maybe he reminded her of someone. Maybe she just liked the way he paid attention to her. After a few minutes, I walked over to his table. He looked up, a little annoyed at first, like I was a stranger asking for change. I put my hand on the back of the chair across from him. "You Ben?" He frowned. "Yeah, do I know you?" "No. I'm Claire's husband." His face didn't move at first. Then the corners of his mouth pulled down slightly, like he was trying to decide what expression was appropriate. He didn't say anything, just stared. "I know everything," I continued. "The shared document. The times you were at my house. The bullshit compliments you wrote to each other. All of it." He leaned forward a bit, glanced around to see if anyone was listening. "Look, I don't want any trouble." "There's no trouble," I said, keeping my voice low. "I just wanted to make sure you saw my face. So the next time you think about sneaking into someone's life, you remember there's a person on the other end. A real one." Ben started to say something, maybe an apology, maybe just noise, but I raised my hand. "I'm not interested in your version. I don't care if you think she's confused or if you had some emotional connection. You fucked her. In my house. That's the only detail that matters." He nodded, still not saying a word. His sandwich sat untouched on the table between us. I stood up. "Stay away from her. I don't care what she tells you. This ends now." As I walked out, I didn't feel better. There wasn't any sense of justice or satisfaction. I just felt tired. Exhausted in a way I didn't even know was possible. I didn't call Claire. I didn't rush home. I drove around for a while, not thinking about anything in particular. When I finally got home, she was on the couch, tablet on her lap, legs curled up under her like nothing had happened. "Where were you?" she asked, not looking up. I sat down across from her and waited until she met my eyes. I saw him. Claire didn't react. I told him it's over. Between you and him. She raised an eyebrow, set the tablet aside. "And what if I don't agree with that?" "Then you're not just a liar," I said. "You're an idiot." She laughed. Not loud. Just that sharp, breathy kind of laugh people use when they don't know what else to say. "Is this where you kick me out?" "No," I said. "This is where I start deciding how far I want to take this." I didn't sleep that night either, but the difference was that this time I didn't feel helpless. I felt focused. The numbness had worn off and been replaced by something far more useful. I knew she had to be punished. not in the childish way of yelling and throwing plates. That was emotion. This had to be logic. I wanted her to feel what I felt. This creeping, quiet destruction of everything she thought she had control over. I wasn't going to be the guy who just moved out, let her play victim, and watched as she painted a new life for herself while I picked up the pieces. If she wanted freedom, she was going to earn it. Not just with the divorce, but with the fallout. Claire didn't say much the next morning. She sat across from me, sipping coffee like the house wasn't split down the middle with silence and unresolved rage. I told her I was going to take the day off again, and she just nodded, barely looking up from her mug. She thought it was over, that I'd vented, confronted, and now I'd collapse inward like a balloon with a slow leak. She didn't get it. She thought I was still on the defensive. What she didn't know was that I had already copied the entire document from the tablet and saved it to multiple drives. I had printed screenshots of the worst parts. I wasn't going to beg her to stay or scream at her to leave. I was going to make her want to disappear on her own. That afternoon, I drove to her sister's house. Emily and I had never been close, but we'd gotten along well enough at family gatherings. She was practical, cold in a way that made her hard to get close to, but always the one Claire turned to for advice. She was single, never married, and often criticized our relationship in the little jabs only siblings can get away with. I knocked on her door and waited, holding the folder in my hand. When she opened the door and saw me, her eyes narrowed. "Tom, what are you doing here? I need 15 minutes of your time. That's all." She hesitated, then stepped aside to let me in. I sat on the couch while she stood near the kitchen counter, arms folded, waiting. "I'm not here to make drama," I started. "I just want you to see something. After that, you can do whatever you want with it. But I think you'll want to see it." She didn't say anything, just watched me closely as I opened the folder and handed her the first printed page. The silence stretched on as she read. Her eyes moved faster with each line, her face tightening. After the second page, she let out a breath that was more of a hiss. "She's been doing this in your house?" "Yeah." "With this guy from the school?" "Yeah." Emily looked down at the rest of the pages, but didn't move to pick them up. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because she listens to you. You're the only person she listens to. I don't need advice. I don't want sympathy. But I thought you deserved to know who she really is before she spins her version of what's going on." She was quiet for a few seconds, then nodded slowly. "You're right. She'll twist this to make herself the victim. She already has. She thinks I'm going to walk away quietly. I'm not. What are you going to do?" "I'm not sure yet. But I want her to lose more than just me. I want her to feel what it's like to be stripped of her image. I want the people she values to know what she did." Emily finally sat down, folded her hands, and stared at the pages in front of her. She always wanted control. She hated when things didn't go the way she planned. "Exactly," I said. "So I'm going to take control away from her." She didn't offer any approval or judgment, just gave me a long look and said, "You know this is going to blow up. I'm counting on it." When I got home, Claire was on the phone. She was laughing, the kind of fake laugh she used when she wanted someone to like her. I didn't bother asking who it was. I went straight to the bedroom and grabbed the small safe she kept in the closet. I knew the code, her birth year, and her first cat's name. I opened it and took out everything. Passports, a stack of old journals, and most importantly, the little envelope of emergency cash she never told me about, but always dipped into when she didn't want me to know what she was spending on. I took every bill, closed the safe, and put it back exactly the way I found it. She came in a few minutes later, still holding her phone. "Did you go in my safe?" she asked. "Yeah." "What the hell, Tom? You hid a guy in my house. I'm not going to pretend your privacy means anything anymore. You had no right. And you had no right to cheat on your husband under his roof. But you did. So now we're even." Claire clenched her jaw, then walked out. I heard her pacing the kitchen, probably trying to decide if she should call someone, yell at someone, or just drink until it stopped hurting. That night, I emailed screenshots of the chat logs to myself from a burner account. Then I made copies. I put one in an envelope labeled with her mother's address, another with her boss's name, a third with the PDA leader's name, the woman Claire always bragged about being close to. I wasn't trying to humiliate her in public. I was making sure there was no version of this where she got to walk away untouched. She didn't say a word the next morning, but I could feel her watching me. Her eyes followed every move I made, from the way I buttered my toast to the way I checked my phone. She wasn't ready to confront me directly, probably still weighing how much I knew, what I'd done, what I was planning. The way she hovered near the coffee machine for an extra minute, the way she asked if I was working from home again. It was clear she knew something had shifted but didn't know how deep the damage went. I gave her nothing. No clues, no reactions, just the kind of calm she used to pride herself on having in situations like this. She left the house just before 8, slamming the door slightly harder than usual, probably thinking she could slam her guilt away. I waited 30 minutes, then pulled the envelopes from my backpack. Each one was labeled and sealed. One for her mother, who had always thought Claire could do no wrong. One for her boss, who had spoken at length about how Claire represented the professionalism and poise of their office. And one for Deborah Thompson, the PDA coordinator, the woman Claire constantly gushed about and tried so hard to impress. These weren't revenge tools. These were reminders. These were the pieces of the mask she wore, all carefully positioned for maximum shatter. I drove to the post office, mailed them with tracking numbers, and walked out without even a glance back. That evening, Claire came home with the kind of forced energy she usually reserved for fake dinner parties. She smiled too wide, asked how my day was, tried to make conversation about some neighborhood gossip. I let her talk. I answered when I had to. I nodded, but I didn't engage. I just observed, and I knew she was trying to lure me into a conversation where she could regain control, where she could steer things back to some version of normal that made her feel safe. She didn't realize that space was gone. After dinner, she finally broke. I was wiping down the counter when she set her glass down too loudly and said, "Are you going to keep punishing me in silence, or do you want to actually talk about it?" "I already talked to him," I replied, keeping my voice level. She blinked, confused for a second. "Talk to who?" "Ben." Her shoulders dropped half an inch, and she stepped back like I'd shoved her. "You went to him?" "I introduced myself," I said, drying my hands with a towel. "I thought he should know who's been funding his little lunch dates." "You had no right. Neither did you. But here we are." Claire crossed her arms and leaned against the fridge. "So what? You're going to make this into a public circus?" I turned to face her fully. "What makes you think it's about you at all? You weren't even honest enough to end it like an adult. You lied. You hid. And you let me find out in the most pathetic way possible." She looked like she wanted to say something, but no words came out. I stepped closer, keeping my distance, but not enough to let her feel comfortable. "I know you've been thinking about how this ends," I said. "You probably thought I'd either kick you out or beg you to stay. But it's not going to be either. I'm not giving you the easy way out. I'm going to let you sit in this house and feel the cracks in your perfect little image widen every day." Claire didn't respond. She stood there breathing through her nose, face tight, waiting for me to stop talking. I didn't give her the satisfaction. "I'm filing for divorce next week," I said. "I've already met with a lawyer. I'm not asking for anything you wouldn't give, just my share of what's left. No negotiation." She nodded, slow and deliberate. "And you think mailing those pages makes you what? Strong?" "No," I said. "It makes me fair." She walked away after that. I heard the bedroom door close, but she didn't lock it. I didn't go after her. I sat on the couch for a long time, not even turning the TV on. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was just empty. But even that felt like progress. At least it wasn't confusion anymore. Later that night, she came back into the living room, her face calmer. She didn't sit. She stood near the hallway and crossed her arms. "I never hated you," she said. "It wasn't about that. You just liked him more." "It wasn't about that either." "Then what was it?" She looked down at the floor, thinking, maybe stalling. I felt invisible. For a long time. "And instead of talking to me about that, you invited someone else in and gave him what you used to give me." "I didn't plan it, Tom. No one ever does." She took a deep breath. "Are you going to tell the kids?" "Not now, but I won't lie to them if they ask." She nodded again. "I don't want this to turn into war." It already did. We stood there for a few seconds, locked in that weird space between familiarity and hostility. She turned and went back to the bedroom. I stayed on the couch. I didn't want to sleep next to someone who thought betrayal was something that could be explained away like a scheduling mistake. The divorce process moved fast. Once I handed everything to the lawyer, it was like a machine kicking into gear. Documents, deadlines, meetings. There wasn't any drawn-out courtroom drama. Claire didn't contest anything. I think she knew better than to push. The evidence I had wasn't just emotional. It was practical. Dates, times, records. even a few camera stills I hadn't shown her. I didn't want alimony, didn't want to drag it out. I just wanted it done. Our house was sold in less than a month. We split the money right down the middle. She tried to suggest keeping the place for the sake of stability, but I shut that down immediately. Stability had left the house the moment she started bringing someone else into it. She moved into an apartment near her sister's, and I found a new place across town. Smaller, quieter. It had just enough space for what I needed: my clothes, my computer, a mattress, and a coffee machine. Our final conversation happened the day we signed the last set of documents. It wasn't planned. We were sitting in the lawyer's office, both of us waiting for copies, and the silence was uncomfortable in that thick, heavy way that doesn't let you breathe right. She looked over at me like she wanted to say something, then actually did. "Do you hate me?" she asked. "No." She looked surprised, even a little disappointed. "I don't care enough anymore to hate you," I said, and that landed harder than anything else I could have said. She didn't speak after that for a while. When the documents were ready, we stood, signed everything, and shook hands with the attorney. Outside, she lingered by her car while I lit a cigarette I didn't plan to finish. I didn't smoke. I just wanted something to do with my hands. "I didn't think it would end like this," she said. "Neither did I. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did." "I know." There was a pause, and then she asked, "Are you going to tell people everything?" "I already told the ones who matter." "Emily." She saw it all. Claire closed her eyes and sighed. "She hasn't called me in weeks." "That's not my problem." She nodded, slowly. "Well, goodbye, Tom." I didn't answer. I just walked to my car, got in, and drove away. There wasn't anything left to say. The weeks after were quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet. I started going to the gym again, mostly to burn through the restlessness. I got dinner alone a lot, sometimes at places we used to go together, not out of spite, just because they were familiar. One night, the waitress at one of those places asked where Claire was. I told her she wouldn't be coming back. The waitress nodded and said, "She always seemed distant anyway." I tipped extra that night. The hardest part came with the small things. Emails addressed to Mr. and Mrs. from places we hadn't updated yet. Random reminders of anniversaries popping up on my phone. The worst was a package from an online store we used that still had her name on it. I opened it by mistake, thinking it was mine. It was a cookbook she had pre-ordered months ago. I didn't throw it away. I just placed it on the shelf and forgot about it. Friends reached out, mostly to check in, some out of curiosity. I didn't tell them much. I kept it simple. "Claire cheated. We're divorced. I'm fine." That was the version I stuck with. No need to share the details unless someone had been involved. A few of her old friends messaged me, probably feeling the need to pick sides. I ignored those. I saw Ben once more. He didn't notice me. He was walking with another woman near a strip mall. I didn't feel anything. Not jealousy, not anger. Just a passing thought. Some people move on fast, and some people don't stop to think about the damage they leave behind. He never looked back. Neither did I. My family was supportive. My sister came to visit and stayed a weekend. She didn't pry, just helped me move some furniture and brought a few frozen meals like I was recovering from surgery. We didn't talk about Claire. We didn't need to. One night, Claire sent a message. Just a single line. "I'm sorry." I didn't reply. She didn't follow up. That was the last time I heard from her. I wouldn't call what I feel now closure. That implies something was finished, sealed off. It's more like walking out of a room and closing the door without checking if it's locked. It doesn't matter anymore. What's gone is gone. I don't know what comes next. Maybe nothing dramatic. Maybe that's the point. Just quiet mornings, slow evenings, no lies, no guessing. I've stopped waiting for anything to make sense. That's the closest thing to peace I've had in a long time.